I wish I knew how to quit you.
Then why don't you?
This is Codependent Content, a podcast where my partner and I discuss the TV shows, movies, and video games in which we've formed an unhealthy relationship. My name is Mattias, and my co-host is Shannon Riley. Join us each week as we try to make sense of the media we continually give our hearts against our better judgment, and commiserate with us as we struggle and fail to let go of the characters, stories, and worlds that we are entangled with. Because just when we think we're done with content, it draws us back in. Here we are, Shannon. 3 hours late,
but here.
we made it. How do you feel that The Last of Us is over for now?
You know, I was really sad. I didn't think I was going to get my cry fix in this week. And then we watched this movie and I got to cry. That's really all I'm looking for, apparently.
Okay, well, there you go. And so, yeah, as anyone who's not aware, we have been podcasting The Last of Us. Season 1 just ended. And now today we are talking about Everything Everywhere All at Once. This was Shannon's favorite movie of last year.
Yes.
I believe now is her favorite movie of
Forever.
all time. And therefore, we decided we should talk about it in honor of the Oscars and because we do have a week before we move on to Yellow Jackets.
Yeah.
You know, and this is Codependent Content, and content includes everything, including movies, TV shows, you know, whatever we want to talk about, right?
Yes.
Shannon?
Yes.
So yeah, if you're new joining us, usually there's a spoiler warning, but here's what we're gonna say. So in this is a big test for us, Shannon, because now we're moving on from one of the most popular shows of all time to, yes, a popular movie, but something that I feel like does not engage with people as much as it did, even though it should. I mean, argument for me. I mean, The Last of Us is just so big.
I know.
You
it
know?
really is.
And we gained a huge following from talking about that. And this is the real test moving forward is, can we still talk about things that we are not as overly familiar with?
Right.
Because we haven't played a video game. There was no other adaptation before this. It is just the movie, you know? So here we are trying to figure that out. Big spoiler warning. We will just be talking about the entire movie. So this is not a podcast where we kind of give light spoilers and things and whatever, and then maybe not talk about the bigger spoilers. It's all fair game. So if you haven't seen the movie, please check out just respectfully, and then so we can come back maybe next time, or just come back and listen to this at any time. That's a good thing about podcasts is you don't have to be here the first time. You can just save it for later.
You could just come back and take a listen.
Please go watch this movie. Shannon, actually, I forgot to look it up. How many Oscars did this win?
Like 11?
No, that's Lord of the Rings, I believe. I think this one did
13?
7. Let's
Oh.
see. Let's count them down from the bottom. Are you counting on your fingers?
I'm so ready.
So we have Best Costume Design, Best Original Score, I'm sorry. Scratch what I just said.
Done.
Those were nominees.
Done. We're back down to 0 fingers.
And Best Supporting Actress, it was also nominated.
Yes.
So that's where we are. So,
Okay.
but it won Best Editing, Best Original Screenplay, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor, Best Supporting Actress for Jamie Lee Curtis, and Best Actress Michelle Yeoh, and finally Best Picture. So yeah, so we figured this is now a movie that a lot of people maybe missed, maybe didn't want to see, and maybe are just now hearing about for the first time because the Oscars, for some reason, if this passed your radar, we wanted to talk about it today. Not only because it is something that we definitely loved in our journey of going to the movies. Shannon, you completed what? Over 100 movies last year for the first time.
Yeah.
And that was a goal of hers. And in our journey of completing that, Everything Everywhere All at Once definitely rose to the top. And we weren't podcasting at the time, so we wanted to podcast it just about it now. So Shannon, here's my question for you. Why do you want to talk about Everything Everywhere? all at once.
It doesn't matter who you are or what perspective you're coming at this movie from, you will find yourself in it somewhere. And I think that's really important. Often we have conversations about media maybe not clearly representing as many people as it could. And I think here you have a movie that I know I just said, but I'm going to reiterate. No matter who you are, you can find yourself in this movie. And I think that is just stunningly beautiful. And yeah, it makes me feel just warm and like seen. What about you? Why do you want to talk about it?
Because it's fucking awesome.
It's so good.
There's just so much to dive into in this film. It's one of those films where you watch it the first time, you're bombarded with a ride, and you immediately want to get back on again.
Yeah.
And you discover new things every time you watch it, and it surprises you. It comes kind of out of nowhere with the feelings, you know? I have a letterboxed list of films. I'm fascinated with films where, for instance, The Page Master, where a kid gets stuck in a world or pulled into a world not their own, and they're constantly trying to get back or solve the thing, and then they get back and they're maybe forever changed. And you're always kind of wondering, did that happen? Did it not happen? There's other movies like this. I'm blanking on names. There was actually one with Jackie Chan, and there's, oh my God, now I'm just blanking on everything. But the point is like, it's always like this mystical, it mostly happened in the 90s, where this kid would get, or teenager would kind of get sucked into another world. And you always kind of come at the end and it's like, well, did that happen? Or was it? Because you always come back to the point where they were at the beginning, right? And for me, this, I realized, fits that template in this weird multiversal way. And I think that every movie is basically that template. People like to use the hero's journey and stuff. Maybe I'll write something about this someday. But to me, the structure is getting pulled into a different world, trying to get back, realizing you can't get back, then maybe getting back, and then always like kind of struggling to figure out. It's in a certain sense, right? Because things never go back the same. The Hobbit famously is there and back again.
Right.
But when Frodo gets back at the end of Lord of the Rings, it doesn't feel the same. And he was, in essence, dragged into a world that was different from his own.
Right.
I know I mixed metaphors with The Hobbit and then Lord of the Rings, but you know what I'm saying. Same thing with Bilbo,
Right.
He was never the same again. I love this movie because at its simplest, it is that. But then it is also so many other things and complicated and everything and everywhere and all at once, Shannon.
Right. No, I know. I get it.
So yeah, that to me is why I love this film. And I connect with all three of the main characters and their journeys and their wants and their needs. And also because I'm Asian and I feel like I have to support Asian films.
Right.
And this,
Makes sense.
So I figured what we should do is, since this film technically is split up into 3 parts, everything, everywhere, and then all at once. Why don't we just kind of start there? Let's start with everything. In the beginning, we're meeting Evelyn, and she's struggling to put together these receipts. She's doing taxes, and she's being pulled every which way. They're also planning a party for their father for Chinese New Year. And then at the same time, it might be a moment where Joy, their daughter, wants to introduce their grandfather to her girlfriend. It's a whole lot of stuff like happening,
Yeah.
while also running a business, while also running, like trying to figure out these taxes.
Right.
It is a lot. It puts you right into it. the very beginning. I think it's the very best of like the Spielberg kind of opener and like in his heyday where he had so much going on for these like characters. Or even you imagine, what was it? Chris Columbus who directed Home Alone, where at the beginning with Macaulay Culkin and he's trying to get people's attention or find mom or whatever and stuff. And, and everyone is just running around as they're all getting ready to go on a flight and it's Christmas time and also dinner's getting ready. And then he's just trying to get someone's attention, you know, but no one has time for him kind of thing. But it's all happening again, all at once.
Right.
I feel like we're going to say these things over and over again. And I love these kinds of things where you find it hard to kind of keep track of what's happening, you know, and no one's going to sit you down and kind of force you to figure it out and kind of walk you through it. You have to be catching up on these things. Yeah.
Right. It puts you right into Evelyn's mindset because we open this movie with what we know are two of what should be the most important people in her life kind of begging for her attention and that she feels drawn in so many different directions and is ultimately kind of failing in all of those different directions, even lightly. Like on the surface, we already see that she's kind of overwhelmed and like, this isn't working. She can't keep track of this. The papers aren't where they're supposed to be. Her husband's annoying her. Like she doesn't have time for her daughter. It just immediately ingratiates you to this is how Evelyn feels. And now you're right in there with her.
Do you feel like you were on Evelyn's side at the beginning or were you on Joy's side or what's kind of going on through your head as you're watching this?
I had no problem just going along for the ride of Evelyn's character. I'm not saying that she's right, but I can just immediately empathize with her. Of course, you don't want her to blow her daughter off, especially as a girl with a mother. Like you want your mom to pay attention to you, but that didn't stop me at all from being like, I'm in this ride with Evelyn. And I would argue, and we will get there, that part one is so much about Evelyn and part two starts to transmute into Joy and into Waymond as well. So yeah, I had no problem. Just like I'm on Evelyn's team. Let's see kind of where this takes us. Yeah.
So it's a whole lot happening. Evelyn, eventually they get to the IRS office. We meet Jamie Lee Curtis's character Deidre. The what is it? The almost employee of the month, the best auditor of the
the butt plug award.
No, you can't.
That's what it's called.
It was co-opted. I believe it was supposed to stand in for a stamp because an auditor stamps things. What do you think that was supposed to be? No, no, it was always
like a butt plug.
It was always going to be maybe in another universe, Shannon. That was something different. Well, and as we get there, we've been seeing glimpses of something like not quite right, you know, in the world, in the sense that like, what's his name? Waymond is doing some weird things and he's
like activated in the laundromat.
Yeah. And then the screen is messing up. And so in the elevator, we get there and he finally activates and he's suddenly a different person and he downloads everything of Evelyn's life. Yeah. You know, she sees everything that she's experienced up until this point for this Evelyn.
For this timeline of Evelyn. Yeah.
And kind of just connects her to the multiverse, you know? And then something changes in her. I noticed that with the download, after she sees everything, after she takes a look at what her life was, she immediately starts to kind of like believe.
Right.
In this thing or whatever it is. I don't know why she does. I don't know what that is. Maybe that says something, but it didn't take her too much convincing. But basically, I think it was, for me, this not wanting to be here. Absolutely. Not wanting to deal with anything. and when she goes into the broom closet or the janitor's closet and Wayman's there and she's bouncing back and forth trying to figure out what mindset she's in. You talk about dissociating a lot. And I'm like, is this what you do? Is this what's happening to you when you quote unquote dissociate? Or
yeah, I think a parallel we'll consistently draw is how you deal with the big feelings that are happening to you. We see Joy go one way. And I think Evelyn, the way that she deals with like her fear of failure and her feeling like she's out of control is almost to like tighten down and want to control more and like double down on the things that she's saying. And the fact that there's this little whisper that like something could just be a little different for you, I think is so enticing, because when you're stuck in that mindset, you know, it's the same thing every day and it's overwhelming. And of course you don't want to be a part of it. And I think that's why she jumps so easily, is because it's just like a reprieve from the monotony of the life that she's like disappointed in.
Yeah. I think it's hard, especially when we're searching for like the meaning in films and the meaning in what people are trying to show us. And especially with this kind of film where at the very beginning, you're kind of curious, like what is happening? Like, is this really happening or is it not happening? You know, kind of situation. Even at the end, we still don't really know. Was it all a journey of her mind, or was it actually like in the sense of this world actually happening, you know? And you have to take things as they are and then take them as like the metaphor, right? And so we constantly try and figure out what is this metaphor here. And I think that we do find ourselves in moments in our lives where we just realize, how did we get here? You know, what were the things that brought me to this moment? And that's where things start to feel, as Joy puts it later, where why does this matter? What does this matter right now? You know, it doesn't feel like it matters to me because I didn't realize, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
These are small moments, but large in their consequence. And the more of these small moments that you have, the bigger they become and compounding, you know? And I think that's what's going on here, is just realizing like that whole flashback of her life was just also this thing where she was like, I don't know how this happened, how I got here, specifically in the IRS office, trying to justify my things with Waymond and my dad and this woman isn't trying to help. Like, I don't understand what is going on. I think that's what that disassociation is. I think that's what that autopilot is. He specifically says, put yourself on autopilot, and this is what's happening. You know, she's just kind of
going through the motions,
struggling to figure out where she is at right now, you know? I find it interesting. We hear about all these hobbies that she has. You know, she's trying to be a singer, you know, she's trying to, and all these things that she tried to pursue. She wanted to be an actress at one point, you know, she wanted to
be a chef.
She was working on fixing machines. The laundromat, we find out, was never really her dream. It wasn't her thing. It got her to America, and there was a joint dream there. But what she wanted was not to run a laundromat, and I feel like she just kept coming back there. So she's also doing all these taxes for a business that she doesn't feel like is wholly hers, but she's also running because she's the most competent at doing it. And it's Waymond's dream that brought her here, and then she's pursuing all these other hobbies on the side. What is that for you? Because to me, it's like, is she trying to keep herself busy with all this stuff? Like, where is this karaoke machine getting to use? Where is this, like, water massage fixing business? You know what I'm saying? Are these all actually businesses in her head? Or are they just hobbies? What is it? You know?
Yeah. Alpha Raymond says that you fear you've missed every opportunity to make something of your life. And I think that probably sometimes when she gets into moods, she's like, I'm going to start a side project. So I'm going to do the laundromat, and then I'm going to get back into my love for singing, buy some karaoke machine, maybe make some plans, some grand plans that she can't actually follow through with, writes it off as a business expense, and goes from there. I also think she's been maybe not afraid to try, but she thinks that all of those opportunities are closed to her because of the life that she's living. And I do like that as she travels through her multiverse and she picks up all these talents from other hers, it's like, you're so bad at everything, you can be good at anything. It's like she kind of lets herself be drawn into that box and then stays there despite the fact that it makes her unhappy. Mm-hmm. And I think there's just a severe fear of failure and disappointing that it makes her not want to try. It's almost simpler to just like, what do? I run the laundromat. And in my spare time, I buy karaoke machines and I like pretend to be a chef. But ultimately, if I try too hard at those things and then fail, that would hurt more than being kind of unhappy running a laundromat.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think is also kind of going on in the relationship between her and Waymond at this point?
I think there's a little part of her that maybe resents him and doesn't think he's capable. And because of that, she takes on probably more responsibility than she actually needs to. And she kind of plays the martyr. She's like, she's running around trying to get that woman's laundry with the dog. She's like, where is it? It's not where I put it. And Waymond's like, everything's crowded. It's upstairs. He's capable. He knows where it is. But in Evelyn's mind, that's kind of a failure. It's like, oh, you're always kind of like not doing things the way that I would expect them to be done. And that's annoying to her. Mm-hmm. And I think that she sees a lot of their differences more as she's doing it right and Waymond's doing it not as right. And again, I also think that ties back into her fear of failure.
Right. But why do you think what do you think is going on with him on his side of the thing? You know, like, because he's got the divorce papers. Mm-hmm. And this is going to come into play here very soon. And he's dealing with something, you know, I don't know. I just feel like I'm kind of curious, like, how he views all these things that Evelyn's kind of doing. Like, because he's like, my wife gets confused. She confuses hobbies for business, you know? Mm-hmm. But I'm curious, like, how does he actually view it? You know, like, is he supportive of it? Did he like allow this to happen? Like, why didn't he help take care of it? Did she not let him? You know, like, what's kind of going on his side of the thing?
Well,
you know
he even mentions in the beginning, he's like, I know better than to offer you help or to ask if I can help you or something like that. Mm-hmm. So I think probably, unfortunately, from Waymond's perspective, we see what a like warm, engaging person he is just to everyone. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that's been extended to Evelyn in so many different ways, and Evelyn just hasn't been in a space to receive it. So if you're Waymond, you know, he's not stupid. And I'm not sure that he really believes that his wife confuses hobbies for businesses. Mm-hmm. I think that he's constantly showing his support for Evelyn, even when she's doing like wild things that don't make sense. He's always in her corner. And I think that's just his way of, again, showing up for her and trying to make sure that things are okay, because like that's what Waymond does, is he makes sure that things are okay. Mm-hmm. And I think the divorce papers, I don't think he actually wants the divorce. But if you spend years of your life married to someone, and he even says like later, but he says, I see it in how you look at me. Like, if you know, you don't think I'm competent. You're not necessarily appreciative of the things that I do. I can see it. So it's like, how long do you kind of deal with that emotional detachment from someone before you start to draw boundaries for yourself? Mm-hmm. But I think he's in a really difficult place, because I don't believe that like deep in his heart that he actually wants to go through the divorce, because he even says his friend brought it up and it made their relationship better because it opened a conversation. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really just what he wants. We hear it. That's like the first thing he says in the beginning of the movie. He just like wants to talk to her. Mm-hmm. And actually hold a conversation and not just be told that like, you're not important enough for me to engage with right now, perpetually.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think he would have gone I don't think he would have gone through with anything. I think it was also like kind of a weird way to figure out, what do you want here?
Yeah.
It was almost, Waymond is the most interesting character of this entire movie, because he's got like practically no flaws, and he's so nice, and everything, you just want him to succeed, you know? And even here, the divorce papers are almost a way for him to let her know, you can get out of this. You know, if this is not what you want, then you can leave, you know?
Yeah.
Even though she's like, well, we made a sacred vow, you know, kind of thing. Like that's not what he wants to hear. He doesn't want to hear like, you're only here because
The
you,
obligation.
yeah, because we made a vow. Like, I want you to be here because you love me. And that's what she's missing in the entire thing. And, yeah. And I just, his perspective shines through with everything, you know? It's always kind of there. We've seen a lot how people kind of compare the everything bagel of the dark round circle with a white dot in the center, and then the googly eyes that he leaves everywhere to just bring light and joy to everyone, is a white circle with a black dot in the center.
Right.
You know? And obviously we'll come back to that. But I think that it's so interesting that even the most extreme thing, which is kind of like Waymond, this is the like stupidest thing you could do. You know, like
Is to bring up divorce.
You don't need to bring up divorce. Like, it's a very extreme thing to you. It's kind of still, in that sense, almost adorable, because he's not doing it for himself.
Yeah.
You know? And it's really interesting.
And just a little bit into everywhere, but only briefly. When we get the back-to-back shot of Evelyn with the shard of glass and Waymond, and Evelyn signing those divorce papers, I think that's another indicator that, like, Waymond never actually wanted that divorce, because in both scenes she's hurting him. And I don't think that's superfluous at all. So the fact that he, I think you're right, like, brought it up, it's more of a lifeline to her than a get out of jail free card to him. Yeah, I think you're right.
Speaking of Waymond a little bit, he gets a nice little action scene. This is the best thing of the entire film for me. Like, the fanny pack fight. This is also where when I first watched this movie in the theaters, I was like, they had to have reached out to Jackie Chan, because this is such a Jackie Chan fight, you know? And I just couldn't stop thinking, like, wow, man, what if this was like Jackie Chan? And I do remember that recently, after the Oscars, Michelle Yeoh came out and said that in an interview that Jackie Chan and her talked, and he was offered the part.
Oh my God.
And I think that's amazing, and I would have loved to have seen him, but also to see Key, especially after his Oscar win, like, fully deserves this, because not only can he do like funny, lighthearted thing, he can break your heart, and also he can break your arm, apparently, because he's just like he's so unassuming. And then this like action scene comes up, and I just love it. It's just the best thing ever. I love how the Daniels show themselves as not just, we've seen their movies are weird, you know? But when it comes down to it, they understand action, and they understand movement and pacing and all these kinds of stuff. They're really masters of the craft, and especially visually, when just the moment where he sits on the wall, and then he reaches behind him, and then he puts rocks into the fanny pack, and then he extends it, And you know, as a person, not knowing any martial arts or even understanding what's going on, you know exactly what is happening there. And then it makes this thing again. It's just a fanny pack.
Right.
And then it becomes like a dangerous weapon to the point even the security guards are like, oh no. And then, oh fuck. You know, like it's just the most amazing visual storytelling that you just never think of. And I know that like this wasn't necessarily choreographed until like on the day. They figure things out as they go. And I love that their collaborative process and yet their visual storytelling was able to kind of come here where they can always understand like what they're trying to show and why they're showing it and all this kind of stuff. And it was just an amazing fight.
I also think that's one of the first moments that we see Evelyn be kind of like receptive to Alpha Raymond. And as we progress through their stories, we see the difference between the Evelyns and the difference between the Waymonds and how she reacts to those perceived differences in Alpha Waymond versus like our Waymond.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really interesting dichotomy too, because as soon as Waymond snaps out of that fanny pack fight, she's like, what do you mean? Like, you told me to do this. And they're looking at the same thing from two completely different perspectives, which is like, oh, that's their relationship. She's looking at the paper that's like, switch your shoes, think about the closet. And he's looking at the divorce papers. So they're having a conversation about two completely different things, but they're still engaged in that like same energy. And I thought that was really interesting too.
Yeah. And of note, if anyone's confused, I think at this point, like what's going on for like the rest of the movie, this was something where like multiversal travel, time travel kind of thing. What the heck is kind of going on? To me, I don't know why, but it just made it click for me that the diverging point is the punch. When she punches Jamie Lee Curtis in the face, and that's it. We're in a different timeline for the rest of the film until they eventually cut back to a timeline where the punch didn't happen, and we keep coming back there. And that's when they talk about the divorce in the car, and they start messing with the decorations for the New Year party, you know. And I love once you like understand that, you're kind of like figuring out like it's making sense for me of like what's happening in this whole thing.
Absolutely.
You know? We are now in the journey, right? When she took that step, we're in that thing, which is funny is because I don't know, I have here when he says you can live up to your ultimate potential or you can just lie here, and she's like, I'll lie here.
Yeah.
You know? it's too late. You've already done the thing, right? You've already entered the world. You can't go back. Right. Kind of thing. And she's still fighting it in a certain way. Right.
Absolutely.
As we go through, he's trying to tell her what's kind of going on and explain to her all the verses and how they're all connected. And he mentions Jobu Tabaki. It's just nonsense word as far as we can tell. I haven't looked it up, but he describes Jobu Tabaki as a being or a person that has no real motives or desires. That's also Evelyn. You know, that in this kind of world, and we come to realize as she starts to become into her ultimate form, I guess, you know, I find it interesting how he mentions that, because like, isn't there is a motive or desire too when we find out that it is joy, you know, and it is this joy that's like hopping universes, trying to figure out like to find this Evelyn, you know, find someone who figures out who she wants. I come back to that line. This is a person who has no real motives or desires, and she's seeking out another person that understands that, who has no real motives or desires. Yeah. But also how reductive to say that, you know, because it isn't necessarily a person who has no motives or desires.
Absolutely.
It's a person that has a lot of motives and desires, and for whatever reason can't reach them, you know?
I felt that spending so much time with Evelyn puts me in like freeze because of fear of failure. And kind of switching into the Jobu dash joy, it's like that personifies depression for me. No real motives or desires. Like that's depression. And the longer we spend with Joy or Jobu talking about, number one, looking for someone that gets it, which is Evelyn. She's in her own dissociated form of depression. It just manifests in different ways. And to say that you don't have any motives or desires, and then to know that like Jobu makes the bagel because she wants everything to end, I think was a great. You see 3 different coping mechanisms here. It's like depression,
she doesn't
fear,
want
failure.
everything to end. She wants she wants to leave this life. You know, so it's
right.
In a sense like everything, yes, but
everything for her.
Yeah.
I apologize because in the scheme of this context, I should
she
have been
even
more
says
articulate.
like I didn't do it to destroy everything.
But that's what I meant. She doesn't want to be alive anymore, basically, because she can't handle her own forms of suffering. And I think it's interesting falling back on apathy in the face of overwhelm. Joy tries to take control. So it's control in the face of overwhelm. She's like, if I'm the one that has control and I'm the one who can handle everything, maybe I can figure it out. With Joy, she's so overwhelmed that it's like, what's the fucking point? Nothing matters. We're always going to find ourselves back at this point where I'm unhappy, where I'm not feeling seen, where I'm not feeling heard. And I think that's interesting too, because Jobu falls into like self-sabotage habits and chaos patterns. And those are things that can manifest like through depression as well. So it was interesting to see them characterized in Jobu when it is such a like signature trait of clinical depression.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think I want to talk a little bit more about the depression and things like that.
Sure.
But for now, I want to move on. I wanted to go back and write this down, but I totally forgot. I didn't have time to kind of look for it. But Wayman goes on this monologue and he's talking to Evelyn when he's trying to convince her. And again, this is where this hits home for me of like this kind of journey that we're on and the kind of story that we're telling where you can't go back, right? And he's trying to convince her like we got to keep moving forward. And he says things to the effect of, you felt it. You felt what's been wrong with the universe. Your hair doesn't fall quite right. You know, things don't fit the same way. You're just feeling this kind of thing. And in essence, like, that is kind of like the depression that you're talking about, right? But it's also just a beautiful thing where he says our institutions are failing, you know. And I think at this point, like, you start to realize it's like, oh, we are all collectively feeling these things, you know. And for him to put it into kind of like a perspective, you know, things are they just aren't right now. And what do we like do about that? You know? And do you have how did that kind of make you feel, or did that kind of resonate with you in that?
It definitely stuck out to me. Just like you said with the depression, it's like one day things are fine and the next day I'm crying because my coat jacket or my coat pocket got caught on the door handle on my way out and everything's going wrong today. Maybe on a good day that doesn't bother you, but on days where you feel it, you feel it. And I think that was just a great way to put you into that mindset of like, in you when something is just a little bit off, and it manifests not always in huge gestures, but sometimes in little things like maybe you didn't have sugar for your coffee today, or maybe your shirt's a little stretched out and it's just a little harder than it usually is. So
yeah. Maybe we'll come back to that. Maybe we'll figure it out. He's again trying to explain how to verse jump at this point
Mhm.
as they're going through these things. And he talks about the algorithm that they developed where you, in order to get to another version of yourself, you got to do something kind of fucking weird, you know? I'm curious, what do you think that algorithm means on a metaphorical level, you know? What that kind of represents in terms of like when we're struggling or we're trying to reach out, what that, do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, not a formulated one yet, do you?
No, I think it's just interesting. Maybe the fact that this is in order to break us out of these moments. And again, if this all started with the idea of like, she's wondering how did she get to this point, right? If that's the kind of inciting incident, is looking back in your life and figuring out how am I here? How am I here doing this thing right now? I'd never expected that. Then how do you kind of connect to something that you maybe were passionate about? This is something that we talk about with people who are dealing with depression, right? And finding something that you have been passionate about, right?
Right.
And finding something that you brings you joy, you know? And in essence, she's kind of connecting to those versions of herself, you know? But in order to do that, she has to do something that brings her out of that funk, you know?
Yeah.
It's something extreme, you know, it's something weird, you know? I don't know why it has to be like a weird thing, but there is something there about like, you got to do something to connect you to something that you're passionate about. That's like the first step, right?
Yeah.
To getting you out of this.
Maybe it's even... Yeah, okay. So it's about like being intentional. Like, instead of just going along with the path that's ahead of you, if you don't like the path that's in front of you, you have to be intentional with your choices to get to a different place. So in the movie, that manifests as like eating chapstick and putting trophies into your butthole. And in our regular life, that just means like, oh, you've been saying no to this pottery class every Wednesday? Like, go this week, because the smallest choice can put you on a completely different path. So every little choice then, even though it doesn't matter, does matter, because you're one choice away from living a completely different life at any given moment.
Yeah. As I feel like this is something that I thought you would have connected with more as someone who told me they wanted to be a manic pixie dream girl with their pink hair. And I feel like we've seen these kinds of things in other films, right? Like, you're dealing with so much, you just do something. Just get out of your body for a second. Just put yourself. And I feel like all these things also kind of put us into a present moment, right? When we are in our acting classes, you know, and we're trying to do these like weird things and we're trying to break out of our shell and whatever, it's usually weird and it feels awkward, right? But it's also this kind of pinch that gets us to be in just the moment, you know, and to feel that and to allow it to be there before we can, okay, now we do what we're supposed to do. Now you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's just bringing us back to kind of like a reality by doing something different, you know? I feel like there's so much more probably there. There's someone I'm sure that can write a whole essay about it, but I guess that's to me like how it like kind of resonated.
Yeah.
You know?
Good take.
And then I don't know. I'm just going to, these are less notes and more things that I'm just like, man, that was something. And I don't know.
Tell me.
I don't know. She just said, I saw my life without you and it was beautiful. And like, you understand her at that moment, but also,
what a mean fucking thing to say.
That was like for someone who you know was going to serve you divorce papers at this point, you know? And wow, just like, I find it interesting that the more she taps into, and we keep talking about this, I think, the more she taps into her other selves, just the worse it becomes for everything and for her current moment. You know, the more we live in our dreams and our potentials and all the things that we think that could have happened in our lives and stuff, it is something that we can always we're constantly fascinated with. We're constantly just our regrets, right?
Mhm.
But that doesn't serve us. That doesn't serve like where we are now,
Right.
And it's weird is because she's not, I think it's interesting. She's not using what's given to her in the right way, right? Because
Right.
there is potential and like knowing like you could have been this, you could have been that. These are the things that we're interested in. These are the things that bring us passion, but also it's not about looking at, well, this is what my life could have been. It's
Mhm.
just looking at like, well, what did that bring you joy and how do you use that, right? How do you bring it back into your life here? Not
Mhm.
how do you go seek that out into another life? How do you,
Right.
not where do you live there? You know what I'm saying?
Mhm. And I think also speaks to the point I made earlier where I think she almost puts her failed, like Waymond is the scapegoat for her sort of unrealized dreams and her potentials. So for her to come back and say, I saw my life without you in it and it was beautiful, shows me that she thinks that if she would have made the right decision and not followed Waymond, that she would be living her absolute, like, ideal grass is always greener sort of reality
Mm-hmm.
instead of like looking at what's in front of her and finding her own failings, which we circle to by the very end of the movie. But still, here it's so she's just so distracted. She's like, "This is what I could have been, and I had so much potential." And in a way, like you almost took that away from me. And if I could have been without you, I would have been free to really flourish.
Mm-hmm.
And what a kind of shitty thing to put on another person.
Mm-hmm.
When again there is accountability on her end to take, but because of generational trauma she's going through a whole thing too. So I'm not unempathetic to Evelyn and the things that she's gone through in her family that make her the way that she is.
Mm-hmm.
But you just see how desperate she is and how unfulfilled she feels when she comes back, seeing what she maybe could have had, and like just she wants that. She got a taste of it and now she just wants more and more and more.
Yeah. And we get, again, kind of the opposite of that when he tells her like why she matters, and he says, you're the one, you're living the worst you.
Yeah, God.
And it is one of those things where like, I feel that. And that's like my question of this whole thing. Like, are we living our worst us,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like it's weird. It's all perspective though of how we're looking at it,
Mm-hmm.
Because this alpha Waymond is like, for sure, like you're the one that has the least potential out of all of them, which also gives you the most potential for some reason to like save the multiverse.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the other Waymond that shows her that it's not true.
Right.
It's another Waymond that has seen everything that she has fulfilled and another life, that potential, a life without him and what that was. And he says it's like, I still would have been happy just going in the circle with you of laundry and taxes.
Yeah.
That, and it's that matter of perspective. Like, is this actually the worst us? Are you living the worst you? Like, are you not? That's just a line that like kind of cuts to the core of like of how we feel at times,
Yeah. And what makes you the best you is Evelyn living the worst version of herself because she is so cut off from like acceptance and love and maybe like day-to-day moments of joy. So it's not because she's stuck at a laundromat or made the wrong decision coming to America or can't pay her taxes that means that she's living the worst version of herself. It's all of the like mental and emotional baggage.
Mm-hmm.
And again, being able to see that release, I think, shows us that she's capable in this universe with this Evelyn of being a much better version of herself without actually becoming a famous singer or a famous chef or a mechanic or whatever the fuck she wanted to be.
Yeah. You mentioned generational trauma. earlier, and it really starts to come into focus when Joy, as Jobu Tabaki, kind of explains like why she's searching for this Evelyn. And I find it interesting that this Evelyn, Joy's looking for an Evelyn that understands her. But the only reason this Evelyn understands Joy is she's the one, even though she is apparently the most useless, she is the one that pushed Joy. I'm sorry. She's the one that was pushed by her father so much to be something, to be a singer, to be anything, to not do, to kind of reach these kind of potentials. And then the joy is coming from a universe where her mother pushed her like so much, to the point where she was also seeing everything, right?
Right.
And so these are two people that are dealing with a generational trauma, and they pass it down, maybe in a different universe or whatever in this kind of context, but it is very much, this is why Joy is not seeking out help from anyone else. It's seeking out this person so someone else can understand at all what she's dealing with. And it's people that did it to us. It's people that had it done to them,
Yeah.
Any thoughts there?
Just how lonely and isolating. Our parents fuck us up. Even they mean so well, and no matter how much love they give you, no matter how much love we're able to give to each other, we fuck up the people that we care about in different ways. And I think specifically if we're tying like clinical depression to the Joy Jobu kind of arc here, it's like when you feel like that, sometimes you do need someone. It's not something that's easily explained. You have to kind of just innately understand what you're feeling. And to find that in Evelyn, in this universe's Evelyn, I think is really special. And I think kind of briefly almost gives it, like tries to percolate some sort of hope in Jobu. And that's why she keeps saying like, nothing matters. None of this matters, because as she's experiencing more of someone that understands, she even says it later, like, I was hoping that you maybe would see a different way out of this, that you would offer me some sort of insight as someone that has also gone through this, that maybe things are different, or that there's a different outcome, or if there's something that I could be doing differently to make it not like feel so heavy. And Evelyn can't do anything but share that moment.
Yeah. And I find that interesting that her response to learning and like seeing what Joy is struggling with, I think it's not that Evelyn doesn't see, right? It's not that she doesn't understand what's happening, because she is the only one that could understand it. She does understand it. But her response to doing that is to dig deeper into other selves. Her reaction is to suddenly get everything from everywhere of these places,
right.
Other versions of her, to try and reach this kind of weird potential, because she can save. It's a knee-jerk reaction of like fighting, so that she can fight this person, not realizing she thinks she's protecting Joy from herself.
Right.
But that ends up being like the wrong answer. And it ends up like splitting her in a way, splitting her amongst all these different universes. And she is then at that point everywhere.
Right.
Which brings us to the next thing where she is everywhere in this section. And she's dealing with all this stuff. That what do you think that is when we're, is it just what I just said, where we try and fix ourselves, I guess, to like help, you know what I'm saying, or to show them what do you think that was, you know?
What do I think seeing Evelyn everywhere was supposed to make me feel?
In terms of like, what was she trying to accomplish? And then what is that metaphor, you know, for this kind of...
I really do think it's like Evelyn trying to fix her shit.
Yeah.
And we see it degrade even further before it gets better. But again, depression with like self-destructive or chaotic habits, instead of looking at the information that's in front of her, like when Wayman tries to give her CEO Wayman tries to give her some hard truths, she just digs in deeper. She digs her heels in. She's like, no, that's not what this is. No, that's not what that is. She like ruins I don't know. I really think all of these different universes are just her taking an honest look in the mirror and realizing where she can hold the accountability of what she hasn't been able to give for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
If she hasn't been able to be maybe as attentive or receptive or open or as maybe communicative as she could have been.
Mm-hmm.
She's seeing these flaws reflected back at her in full clarity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just the process of her like recognizing it, owning it, and then deciding to take the different path and eat the chapstick.
Mm-hmm.
Through this entire chunk of the movie.
Sure. I think we're again kind of glossing over details of kind of like what's happening. We're just talking kind of metaphorically about these like themes and these things that the messages that are going on through the movie. But I also just want to take a step back just in case there's anything. We did glaze over the butt plug fight and the and again the amazing visuals that are happening that are representing, I guess, what's going on thematically in this whole thing, you know. And she does essentially, in this universe that we have been observing her in this entire time, die. You know, she flatlines. And we've been stuck with her in the timeline where she punched the Deidre. And then in her search to find the answer and to split herself amongst all the things, she kind of like snaps. And we finally get back to the original timeline, which is them preparing for the New Year's Eve party. And that flatlining, she's still connected to all these things, all these other universes, just not that one. She's connected to all these other universes. And in each of these things, she's starting to be, something's wrong. Something's just not quite right, you know?
Yeah.
And she's pushing people away, and she's getting drunk, and she's messing with other people's dreams and their things, and she's causing chaos.
Yeah. And I think, you know, like you pointed out, and I did gloss over it, she flatlines in, I'm just going to say, like, our OG universe with her, and then makes things far worse before she can start piecing herself together in a better version. So that when she comes back to us, essentially, she has so much more interpersonal knowledge than she did maybe when we left her initially. And I don't want to move forward too fast, but I do just want to say, when we re-meet her and she can finally see, it feels like she can see herself, her relationships, what she wants to fix, the best version of herself, what Wayman has to offer, the emotion on Michelle Yeoh's face, just the way that she is able to look with her eyeballs at Waymond while all those other things kind of intercut through that, I thought was just floored. It was so beautiful because I really felt the weight of the work that she had done kind of like in all those other universes where she realized that, I don't have to push people away or be the strong one or create chaos and be destructive. I can just, as Wayman later says, like, be kind and approach things with love. And seeing that bloom in her as the lights are like circling around her face was just so cool to watch.
Yeah. I think to me there's something where she is at this point becoming the Jobu Tabaku or whatever it is.
Tobu Chewbacca.
In the sense that like she is snapped and she's realizing like she is starting to understand what this Jobu is talking about, that nothing does matter, in that sense. And she's starting to just not care about anything, and how that really does when we start to like look at everything, we start to become overwhelmed with what could be and what could have happened and whatever. And we're still connected to all those different things. And yet we can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
And then we're just like, what, like there's nothing I can do, no matter if I make this decision or I might make that decision, it just comes back to this,
right?
So there's a struggling of what am I to, like, what am I doing, like, matters, so then just do the thing, anything to change something, anything to change like the routine and the circles that I'm going through, and I'm just in, and she says like after this karaoke song, we're just doing taxes and laundry, and she's in this circle and she's just doing anything to get herself out of it because she feels like nothing matters, and I feel like that is the thing that we keep coming back to, is like this is what we all deal with at times, we're all having these like struggles. This is what I deal with. I've written down, I don't remember why, but the circle is everything. That I don't know why I have that written down.
Can you elaborate?
But that I don't know if I can, because I wrote that down. And I don't know if I can even read my handwriting. So the circle is everything. This to me is the struggle, that I deal with in my normal life, right? Of the balance between the dreams and the present moment, right? There are people that do hustle culture. They're constantly trying to get the next thing, find their potential, all this kind of stuff. And I struggle with, well, like I can chase my dreams, or I can just like live in the moment. I can build a home. I can deal with, my animals and you and my relationships, and just like, I want to have time, I don't want to just be go the whole time in hustle culture and not have time on the weekends or have time to like spend it, like I want to know that like my life is about the moments that I live with people, and when we, because you don't ever know, right? It's that carpe diem kind of mentality, and that to me is like, that's the circle, It's like we keep trying to escape the circle, but the circle is the thing that might actually matter sometimes more than trying to like escape it. She's worried about being on the circle, and she's frustrated and she can't deal with it.
Yeah.
But to Wayman in this other universe, and he says, no, the circle is me, the circle is the thing that I would have loved to be with. You just don't understand. I would have loved to have been on that circle. Because it's not about all our potential. It's not about everything that we could have become. It's about just being here now. I don't know. It's hard to express, but yeah, that circle is everything.
That was lovely.
And yeah, I guess moving on. Is there anything else you want to say to kind of move? Because I have some other things like written, but I don't know what you're thinking. And yeah.
I really like when Wayman comes back around and just confronts Evelyn with the fact that she thinks he's weak and that all of the silliness and frivolity and kindness that he engages with isn't out of naivety or like stupidity. It's strategic. It's a choice that he makes because, like you were saying, is if this is the circle that you're on, how do you make it meaningful? Mm-hmm. So yeah, just the idea of being kind, especially when you don't know what's going on, is something that I would like to carry into like every interaction I have moving forward. Because if you can approach, if you could be the best version of yourself and really approach anything that was thrown at you with kindness, like imagine the type of communication and the depth of your relationships and just like how many doors that would really open up to you if we were all able to actually operate only from a place of kindness and sincerity. Mm-hmm. So kind of calling Evelyn out on her shit too, full circle with the whole divorce thing. It's like, yeah, you think I see the way you look at me. I know you don't think I'm competent. I know you think I'm weak. I'm not. And as I was saying, she finally is in a place to see that and recognize it and see that for the strength that it like truly is. Mm-hmm. And that moment was really special for me. And I think it was acted very well. It almost bordered on. I was like, man, if I didn't love this fucking movie so much and I didn't love these actors so much, I might be like, well, that's a little corny, as I was like crying while he was saying it. But yeah. It's such a wonderful idea. And it's so nice to see Evelyn in a position to be receptive to that.
Yeah. I don't remember like when it happens, if it's before or after like that kind of monologues, but like she realizes she does take something in, and it's that where in some universes he's like, I would have done laundry and taxes with you, and then in one universe he's saying like, we can just be kind, just stop fighting, just be kind. And then in the real world, in the one timeline that we are actually supposed to be in, mm-hmm. he's just taking action and he's saying, just please don't. She's going through some things, mm-hmm. my fault. And he's putting into practice like what he kind of preaches in the mm-hmm. other things, you know? And it's after that moment that she starts to kind of see it's that action that she starts to kind of like almost pay it forward, mm-hmm. you know? And I love this idea where in the Rakakun universe, which we've managed to like not talk about this entire time, Harry Shum Jr. is one of my favorite characters of this entire thing. And he says like, I'm useless alone. I can't do it. And she says, we're all useless alone. And this idea that it wasn't like, she also needed that. She needed to like Wayman to represent that as like, mm-hmm. before she could also see that. And so she could also start pulling other people out.
Yeah. And also her telling, oh fuck, why am I forgetting her name? The auditor, Jamie Lee Curtis.
Deidre.
Damn it. Mm-hmm. When she tells Deidre that she's not unlovable, it's like she's telling in these different places, she's telling all these people what she's needed to hear, mm-hmm. kind of to heal her own trauma. You're not unlovable. You're not alone. You don't have to do things alone. And then when she extends that even further to when she's speaking about her daughter, she's like, she's a stubborn mess. And like, it's okay. That doesn't make her any lesser or weaker. Like we're all just kind of in it together. And I like that she was able to extend the gifts that she wasn't able to receive for herself to others, which then also allowed her to like bask in that knowledge too.
Yeah. I think it's worth noting that when she does start to reach out to these people and she does start to help, you know, that this is something that happens in sometimes when we are going through a depression or a down moment in our life. Someone tries to help you and maybe it works for a little bit, but then it doesn't, it stops working, you know? And again, most represented in the Rakakuni timeline where she jumps on his back, she starts doing the thing that he thought he wanted and she's there with him, and for a moment he thinks he's going to accomplish what he wants to get back the raccoon, right? And then he's just too tired, he fails. It's not enough. You know? And sometimes we go through that. Sometimes it's just not enough, you know, and we have to maybe try something different as they do, but it's not always going to be, sometimes it's only temporary. Sometimes it's just a little bit of rise, but it's not the answer, you know?
And that's also the beauty in later, the fact that she like carries him. Like the reason why it's so important that we have community and we have people that we trust and can be vulnerable with is that sometimes like it's just too heavy to carry by yourself. And being able to relinquish and give into like someone else being able to support and help. And I almost think it's easier to offer help than it is to accept it sometimes. But just knowing, you know, me just saying, oh, you're not alone. I'll help you run this marathon. If you're too tired to do it, then my choice is either leave you there or fucking pick you up and I will like carry you with me.
Yeah.
And I think that's really special too, because again, we've seen in beats throughout this movie that Evelyn has not been in a place to offer that sort of support. And now she is. And what a beautiful thing that we're able to build this world where we're all just a little bit like more available to each other. And I think this comes into play again, the fact that, you know, you don't just magically cure depression. It doesn't just, oh, you reached me, you fixed it, everything's great. Forgive me if I jump over something, just cut in if I do. But when we get to Jobu asking like, just let me go. I just want to go. And then she reaches back out and Evelyn's able to hold that weight with her. And then boom, we've got Evelyn and Joy saying the same thing. Like, just let me go. And Evelyn's like, I get it. Like, out of all the things I could be doing, why the fuck would I choose to be like doing this hard, like painful thing with you? And it's because when you love people, like there's nothing else you would rather be doing. But we see, I think, at the very end of the movie where she kind of dissociates again, I think that's just indicative of like, yeah, things can be good, but that doesn't mean that it's ever fully gone. You don't just magically like understand, get the cure. Like, I know I'm going to be nice and we all love each other and that makes me feel good all the time, because it doesn't. It helps, but it doesn't mean that that's not going to seep back in. And that's why community is so important, because when those moments do creep up in you again, you know you have someone like Wayman and Joy, and you're now accepting Granddad to like be there to support you.
Yeah. I do think we should move on to the ultimate fight and the ultimate kind of argument between these two. But before that, I do want to ask, like, if you have anything to say about hot dog fingers, because there is something there with, in this kind of these acts of kindness, she's realizing that in a world that she kind of tapped into, where she is in, and this was the weirdest thing for me. I was like, how did she get to not only like being in all the other universes, there's like still connection there. She's still kind of connected to Waymond in some way. There's still a daughter, and probably most of them, that is Joy. You know what I'm saying? There's still all these things. She still had her father. Right. Right. But in this universe. She's so far removed that not only does she still meet Deidre, but they have hot dog fingers, and they are married. There is no Eamon. There is no
right.
And again, another life. Again, another thing where I saw my life without you, and it was beautiful, kind of thing. But it's not the same. It's not the same way you look at it. But instead, it's this other person, and again, shows you just the great depths of what our quote unquote potential is, of all the different things that we could pursue, all the different things that could have happened, we can always live in, you know? But at least in this moment, it comes down to her telling this person, like, you're not unlovable. Because in another world, she could have loved her, you know? And she did love her, you know? Even with hot dog fingers, even in a world where it's like, you're not just unlovable. And it's this idea of two people connecting across space and time from two very, very different worlds that like just learn to accept each other, that have been through the same thing. Both of them recognizing we both, I understand what you're going through because I was also there, and you know what, this is, it makes sense now, you know, and this idea of empathy that we're going through. And the reason why we love these things and the reason why we talk about content is because of empathy, right? You know, and we're trying to empathize with the characters we love. And this is it, like her empathizing with someone else. Just such a beautiful moment in the weirdest possible way of hot dog fingers. But yeah, just like tells you to connect with the people because you don't know, again, what their story is. This idea that we never know what someone else is going through. Right. You know, because in the beginning, she's like, this person hates Chinese people. You know, she has it out for whatever. And then we meet Jamie Deidre, and I don't think we ever get the idea that she hates Chinese people, but she's really good at her job. But she's also so good at her job that she doesn't have a time to think about other people, you know? And it's also that shared empathy that allows her to be able to give them another week on the taxes, you know? And in that, like, it's like a side thing that's happening, you know, of understanding. It's not really our main story. It doesn't really impact our main story, but it's enough for her to like understand, you know? But also, she was gay for a little bit, I guess, in the other thing. So then she could realize, oh, this is not quite as out of the ordinary. So maybe there's something there with her daughter having a girlfriend that she might...
Probably a little bit of that.
Yeah, what do you think?
Everything you said that wonderfully. I agree with all of your points. It just made me think of something else that Deidre says, and I'm paraphrasing because I didn't write down the exact quote, but something about like being cold and unlovable, and almost wearing that as your like new armor, your new jacket.
Yeah, she kind of went through life just, you know, accepting that she was.
It's like, you gave me this to wear, and I'm accepting it. And it's like we do that because in a really fucked up way, it's almost easier to do that. Like it was almost easier for Evelyn to just think about the grass being greener and never do whatever actions she needed to do to either work on herself or pursue those things. It's maybe a little easier for Deidre to just dive into a job that praises her for being calculating and cold. Than to be vulnerable and fight and say like, no, there's so much softness in me. Like it's hard to let out sometimes. Yeah, I love that. I love that this idea that like that she went through this and now she's in a place where she's like, well, I'm going to fulfill my fullest potential. But unfortunately, when she does that, it becomes a thing that she becomes nothing to like everyone else. In a sense, like there's that wall there. She doesn't become like a human, you know? She's a person that hates other people, you know, all this kind of, there's calculating. It's almost like a robot in a sense. Is a Terminator. She's really good at her job, but like, what does that really actually say?
right? You have all these awards, but they all look like butt plugs. So what does that actually say about you? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love that. There's a similar thing that we can look at between Evelyn and Deidre that's like so beautiful, and how they find each other and how they kind of connect with each other in this moment and realize that like we're just human beings, and then dealing with the idea that the potential doesn't actually do anything. Doesn't matter, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, let's get to the climax of the thing. We're dealing with two different things, right? She's back in the timeline where she punched Deidre, and she's fighting all these different people, but now she's fighting them with the way that Wayman wanted, which is kindness, right? Showing them a place where like if someone just helped you, you know, someone just gave you what you know, saw you and understood you, like I could reach you and I could stop you from being this lonely person. Because again, we're dealing with people who are of the belief that what's interesting is the grandpa is kind of leading this group of people, and he's like, just let her go, let her kill herself because she's destroying everything, you know? And these are people that like believe in that kind of thing. They believe in his, I keep forgetting, like they're not part of, because there are other people that believe in her cult, you know, that are also of like, we also believe like nothing matters, you know? But in this fight, Evelyn is letting them connect to their trauma, right?
Yeah.
The things that are like hurting them so much, to kind of show them that it's can be different, you know, that you just need to reach out, right? Kind of thing, right? And we're jumping back into a fight between her and Joy in the parking lot, where they're laying everything out on the table after she confronted Grandpa and said, this is it. I've accepted it. I've accepted these are, and you should accept it too. They are girlfriends. But Joy's still feeling something. She's still not understanding. She's so angry. And anytime she gets around her, it's just that, right? And I set all that up knowing that there's like, that there's probably something here. I understand the generational trauma version of it, as most people probably will, but you, I think, come at it with a different perspective. And I know there's a lot that you have to say here about just what a mother is probably feeling with a daughter and vice versa. Right?
Yeah. When Evelyn and Jobu are fighting in front of the bagel, it's a clear parallel where Jobu is attack, and Evelyn just keeps trying to welcome her with open arms.
Yeah.
And when you feel hurt or not seen, you know, that first act of kindness does often lead to anger. It's like, this doesn't fix anything. Like, cool, real glad you finally told Grandpa we're girlfriends. This still hurts from years of you doing this to me. And I think Joy says something like, whenever I'm around you, it just hurts. And like, all we do is hurt each other. And the easier thing is to just not be around each other then. But then when Evelyn's able to come back, and I said this earlier, when she says like, you're right, out of all the other things I could be doing, why would I be doing this here with you? It's love. And you want to have those hard conversations with the people that you care about to preserve the relationship. And I think that's where we start to see little like cracks of a different type of vulnerability in Joy, because then she's speaking from a place of like maybe a little bit of shame. Like, don't you want to be somewhere where your daughter's not a mess? Like, not only is it just about the pain that the generational trauma her mother experienced and then passed down to her, it's also the fact that that trauma has probably made her internal monologue that she is a failure or that she is abnormal or that she is in some way like fucking with things in a way that she shouldn't be. And if she could only be more this, that, or the other, that things would be easier. And I think that's like a really sad place to come from too. So Joy's dealing with like multiple layers of hurt and rejection that aren't just from her mom. But you have to come from a place of vulnerability. She like laughs. She's like, this is awkward. This is so awkward, right? It's awkward because it's hard to be that vulnerable. And I'm sure there's like more conversations that they need to have or had in between that parking lot discussion. And then when we see them back at the IRS, like that's not the end of that conversation. Just in the same way you don't wave a magic wand and, oh, the depression's gone forever. It's like, this is just like the first building block of a road that needs to be just completely repaved.
Yeah. I do want to acknowledge that I don't think it's as clear cut for me that this is just a metaphor for like depression and maybe suicidal tendencies.
Mm-hmm.
This, I think, always comes back down to these very specific thing you get from generational trauma,
Mm-hmm.
right? This idea of my mom, my dad, did they live up to the potential? What was I supposed to live up to? They push these things onto me so much, and I just never know when I'm going to be there, and we're going to eventually pass it down to our own kids. We want them to achieve the things that we couldn't achieve. And we think we're just giving them those opportunities, that everything we do is for them, that kind of thing. But we're not realizing like the kind of pressure that we're like putting onto people. It's a very specific type of depression that only Evelyn can solve in these moments, right? Because she's not in, this is where the Jobu and the Joy are starting to kind of merge and combine, because it's not just a person that wants to destroy themselves. It's a person that just wants to be let go of the pressure, let go of the things, and just to leave and just to separate because she can't deal with it anymore, And she's not, I don't think in the same way, she's not like leaving Becky, she's not leaving whatever life that she is living or whatever. And we don't really know what her kind of desires and potential is. She's not, I don't think, trying to kill herself. She just wants to stop being stuck in this life with the family, and not knowing like where that's leading. Right. So I do think it's like worth acknowledging. It's like there's two things going on here, and I think it's something we can like all kind of relate to, right?
Yeah.
And to understand like what we do to people when we have kids, and we try and like, and we think that we're giving them all the answers, right? Or trying to help them, reach their fullest potential. We're just not, at the end of the day, we're just not enjoying our time. And that's what Evelyn comes down to. I've written that quote where she says, I will cherish these few specks of time, because that is what she's realizing, that she doesn't want to do that anymore. She doesn't want to push her daughter. She doesn't want to, and it's like, it's the answer becomes, I don't want to fight you, but I also don't want to let you go. Right? So many things that happen like all at once. She lets her go, but then she says, but I will go with you, and the Rock universe, she dives down with her. And then in the Rakakuni universe, he does it with him and he helps him get, what I'm saying? And in the Hot Dog Fingers universe, she embraces like the love, and she tells Waymond, in the Kung Fu universe, which is actually like the the what's the movie, the Colors of Love? No, the I don't know. There's a movie that's specifically referencing, and for some reason I'm like forgetting it right now. But in that universe, where she says, "Just don't give up on us," where you think letting go might be the answer, but it's not. It's diving in further.
Yeah.
Right. But it's also recognizing that I shouldn't have done that, and I can keep you, and we can move forward together, right? We can both go down this path together, and everyone is behind her, holding her back from leaving the family, leaving the group, leaving everything that was there, because if we just cherish these specks of time that we have, that's what matters, right? So I'll just move forward. I think that's where we come to the final section, which is all at once. And to me, I'm curious if you think that this is true, what you think your answer is. I'll tell you mine afterwards. We have the idea of the everything bagel, and in Jobu Tapaku's head, it means that nothing matters. If that's true, what do you think we come to at the end of this film? If this is what nothing matters, what is the googly eye? What is the ultimate answer that we come to through all this?
I don't think it's the opposite, which is that everything matters, because that feels like an incredibly weighty statement in the same way that nothing matters feels like. But I think there's a freedom in, if nothing matters, then everything is special. Because in a universe where you can make one choice and your life could fraction off into 8 million different possibilities, how special it is to be here in this one. So I think that's where I land with this movie, is not so much of the like negativity of nothing matters, but in the special in between moments of nothing matters.
No, for sure. That's what kind of I come down to. It's not the opposite. It could easily be said that like, well, in her view, this is the everything bagel. It's a black hole, and it's her believing like nothing matters. I don't believe the opposite is therefore true. That's not what the yin yang of the imagery ever was supposed to represent. It's about balance, right? I talked about Ecclesiastes before in the podcast and how it's my favorite book of the Bible. And it's easy to kind of like say like, well, this is also what this is, it all comes down to kindness, it all comes down to love, right? And this is that was what Jesus was always saying at the end of the day, right? It's just love people, just kindness, right? And there's a way of looking at it. But also Ecclesiastes, you can read that book. I remember people telling me about like reading Ecclesiastes. They're like, man, that book depresses me. It bums me out, because it kind of reminds you like nothing matters, nothing new under the sun. Like you could do whatever you want. It's not going to come to anything. You're going to die.
Yeah.
You are born from the dirt. You're going to be buried in the dirt. Like, what does it matter? And it depresses them. But to me, I found such joy in that book, because I'm like, oh, nothing matters. Nothing matters. So why care about everything? And I come to the same conclusion with this. It's like, it's still the same. The message is still the same. Nothing matters. But just sometimes you have that little black speck of something that you should pay attention to. You know, the things that like really do matter are these moments that you should be in present for. You know, the specks. It's a speck. The sesame seeds are these specks of things that you will cherish, you know? But it's not because it like matters. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But what doesn't matter? That's not what life is about, you know? It's hard. It's hard to like talk about all these things, but that to me is like what I come back to with this entire thing.
Yeah.
You know, is cherishing these things that we have, you know, and Wayman was right, you know, just show kindness, just be a little bit weird, you know, just we don't come to an end where she's suddenly fulfilling her potential. She's suddenly like living out her wildest dreams. She didn't do a Schedule C to become a singer, you know. She didn't fill out something new to make all these businesses real, you know, because that wasn't the answer in this film. That wasn't the answer in the end. Instead, she is, as you said, like she's still dissociating. They still did the taxes wrong. In Deidre's eyes, she's like, well, you did some things right.
Like, God damn it.
You listened to me, but also you didn't listen to me.
Yeah.
But she's there. She's still not listening and she's still dissociating. But she's, instead of dissociating and thinking about everything her life could have been and looking back on how did I get here, she's looking at these other people and she's hearing their stories. She's experiencing their stories, like the voices, the voiceover, I guess you should say. It sounds like other people. It's like their other things, all the things that they've said to them, all the things that she's experienced, like with them, you know? And to me, there's a kind of like just a cherishing of this moment, that this is just a moment, right? This is a thing that she is at this moment, just choosing to experience, you know, while dissociating.
I 75% agree with that.
Sure.
I didn't realize, or maybe didn't listen hard enough. I thought the dissociation was a clear dissociation, that it's kind of proof that those things don't immediately leave you. But then again, that she makes that choice when she says, I'm here. Because she is here. She's choosing to be present in that moment. So I 100% agree with like our end result. But also in terms of the googly eye and the everything bagel, it's also maybe like the light in which you see things. So like if the everything bagel is mostly dark with little bits of light, that's a completely different mindset than everything is mostly light with little bits of dark. So that could be that's another way to maybe like see the balance of power there too. But now I want to go back and I want to listen to those voices because that's really interesting. But it almost, I would argue, doesn't matter what the voices in Evelyn's head are saying, because as we both said, the end result is that she's choosing to be present with the people that she cares about. And that is so different than the opening scene in the movie where she's just blowing everyone off. So I think that's really special.
Yeah. And it was always there, even from the very beginning. The very first shot is them singing karaoke. And I always thought, I wanted to ask you, I didn't know if I want to ask you at the beginning or the end here. Like, do you think that moment in the mirror with them singing karaoke, was that another universe? Was that this universe? And was that just a moment that was passing? You know, what do you think of that imagery? Right.
Something that sticks out to me about that. Also, love all the mirror like play that we get, but I think that's interesting for like the mirror universes. Is that while they're singing karaoke, Evelyn covers Joy's mouth, and Joy is like trying to like push her hand off. And I didn't even give it a thought of like, oh, I wonder if that's an alternate universe or if that happened. It's just already that's the first thing that we open on is them what you think is having a good time, and she just like shuts Joy down like that. I was like, ooh, that's kind of weird, because I don't think the look on Evelyn's face isn't malicious, but the look on Joy's face isn't unbothered. Joy's face, her eyes are very much like bothered by what's happening.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't see it that way. Yeah.
And Evelyn is just kind of like, oh gosh, is just doing it. I don't. So that I really liked it, but I don't have like a strong opinion of what it is. I just think it was a great way to kind of see already. Like
I think it's again worth like looking back as like this is how they chose to open the movie, you know, and then they end the movie in this kind of same dissociative state kind of and we went through this entire journey, and then she's talking about just cherishing the moments, and then to me it's like, is that a moment that she should have like cherished, right? Is that the fleeting moment that we had, that this house saw, that everything was there, you know, or was that like another universe that she chose not to? This is what it could have been, you know, but she was so focused on like other things, right? You know, so it's worth noting only because it's like it's our first shot of the movie.
Yeah.
So we have to come back to that, you know, that this was something that was like right in front of them and could have been reflected, but like is not happening in this kind of world, you know? So I think it is, does she sing more with her daughter? Does she allow her to like actually, you know what I'm saying? Like where do these hobbies actually become hobbies, you know, and not just her seeking out just another potential thing that she could have done, you know?
Yeah. And again, like where does that like mouth covering come into play?
Sure.
Too.
Who knows? I feel like everything was like fun stuff. So they were just joking around.
Maybe they were just playing around. Maybe.
I don't know that there's too much there, but yeah. Again, it's always, we're in a circle with this film, right? And it's always going to come back to the thing, because this film is just so good, because the more you watch it, the more you can take something from it, you know, and it takes multiple viewings for you to almost feel like you get everything. I don't think we've tackled absolutely everything. I think it's other people have probably, you can find multiple things everywhere, but I'm so glad that like we could have this like conversation. I hope you are too, Shannon, that we
I love it.
This.
And this is only the second time I've watched a movie.
Yeah.
You too, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So if this is how I feel the second time, I'm excited. Maybe I'll wait another year and we can watch it again for the third time and see if we find anything else. But I just love this movie so much. You can find yourself in any like moment in this movie. It is so special. And it's still so much fun too. Like it's not preachy, it's not overwhelming. It's just it's beautiful, and it's weird, and it's fun, and it's so meaningful. I didn't think I would cry over like text on a screen and some rocks. But that just, again, I think shows you like you can find yourself anywhere in this movie, and it'll land.
Yeah. Well, if you have any thoughts about this film, if you watched it this week, anticipating our conversation about it, I hope you really enjoyed this conversation, but you can always email us at codependentcontent@gmail.com and just your thoughts and your discussion on this. Also find us on social media. We often try to post clips, and you can always comment there if you have any thoughts on what we say. If you disagree, if you agree, whatever you want to do, just give us some love and a follow, because we love engaging with everyone there. We do record these live every week, as we try to, at least. This week was a little hard. We had some things that were holding us back from being able to start from on time, but we try and keep a consistent schedule, you know, so you can find us live on Discord. There's a Discord where you can also just post anything you want to say about the movie, and we'll try and engage with it, you know, like I'm trying to create a community where we can have these conversations and talk about. So please do that. Yeah, all those things. Also, next week we are talking about Yellow Jackets season 2. I believe premieres next Sunday.
Mhm.
Am I right in
You're right.
believing that? And then we're going to record again on Monday. So if
Mhm.
you haven't seen the first season of Yellow Jackets, probably get on that. I don't know what this next season is going to be about. That first season could have been lightning in a bottle. This one could be just even better. I'm excited to see the new cast that's getting involved. And
Yeah.
I'm also excited to jump back in with this world of teenage girls trying to survive in the woods and what that did to them 30 years later.
Trauma.
Yeah, we're just never gonna get away from the trauma.
Trauma.
Shannon. It's
I know.
What this
I live for the trauma.
What this podcast is about, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you join this conversation
I
today?
did.
Okay,
I had
great.
a great time.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll see you again next week.
See you next week, Mattias.